To cement his place in the world of survival, Ed Stafford has challenged all the top survival experts. His opponent this time is Egg Snyder, who once survived a grueling 21-day challenge without any clothing. Both will now attempt to survive in the Amazon for 5 days, without any equipment or food. As survival experts, the moment they met, they immediately exchanged strategies for the challenge ahead. This is the harsh environment of northern Thailand. Both contestants must start from a mountain peak and follow the river down to a dam 60 kilometers away. The first to reach the destination will be the winner. As for equipment, each contestant is given a knife to aid them in the challenge. As soon as the competition begins, both of them take off like wild horses, sprinting forward, only to find themselves sliding down a steep cliff. After running for a short while, Nieder spots a banana tree. He quickly squeezes out a few drops of its essence and drinks it for hydration. Then, he gathers a bunch of banana tree cores to carry with him, an excellent natural source of carbohydrates. Without wasting any time, he takes off like a rocket again, and before long, he arrives at a flowing stream. On Ed's side, he spots the stream at the base of the mountain, but getting down is a real challenge. From his vantage point, the drop looks to be around 10 meters. At this moment, he has only 2 choices: slide down the steep slope or take the long way around. Thinking about his wife back home who still needs someone to take care of her, he decides to put victory on hold. At least for now. He chooses to take the long way around. The next day, determined to catch up, Ed sets off at dawn. If he doesn't come up with a special strategy soon, he might just end up finishing in second place in this challenge. After running a long way around, Ed finally reaches the stream. Instead of drinking directly from it, he digs a hole beside the water. The soil can filter out most harmful impurities. Though the water still has a muddy smell, it is safe to drink. Now, if Ed wants to move faster, his only option is to cross the stream ahead. However, this is extremely dangerous. Not long after stepping into the water, he is swept away by the strong current. Luckily, a fallen tree stops him just in time, saving him from disaster. Nieder had his own path. He chose to go through the forest, pushing through dense bushes. After walking a few kilometers, he stopped by a large tree, pulled out his knife, and struck the trunk multiple times, hoping to find something useful. However, all he got were small wood chips falling to the ground. He didn't seem satisfied with this outcome because, unlike Ed, going without food was something he couldn't handle. Skipping 9 meals over 3 days would make it impossible for him to continue the challenge. Luck was on his side. A snake appeared, ready to become his main meal for the day. At this moment, Ed was also thinking of a way to deal with the situation. Swimming across was definitely not an option. He had to build a raft to make it happen. He chopped down a few wild banana trees and tied them together to make a simple raft. Then, he set it afloat on the water, using his strength to gently maneuver it without exerting much energy. After reaching the shore, he moved along the trail, but he hadn't gone far before encountering a major obstacle. Not far from there, Nieder was starting a fire to prepare his grilled snake meal. He didn't know that Ed was standing behind him, watching everything. Ed chose to take a detour to overtake Nieder without him noticing. Luckily, Nieder had no idea what was happening. Ed couldn't stop laughing, thinking he had secured the lead. To save time, he didn't even set up a shelter for the night. This was where he would sleep tonight. That night, Nieder enjoyed a delicious grilled snake, while Ed went without food. Fasting was his strength. The third day of survival began, with only 2 days left to claim victory. Despite spending the night without a campfire or food, Ed was still full of energy. He ran tirelessly for hours. Meanwhile, Nieder accidentally fell into a cave. Unfortunately for 2 bats, they flew straight into his fire. Just like that, he got an unexpected source of protein falling from the sky. In his rush, Ed lost his footing and slipped, tumbling down a waterfall. Luckily, he wasn't injured upon landing. Now, he had no choice but to backtrack and find another way forward. Nieder seemed to be enjoying this survival challenge more than expected. Yesterday, he had grilled snake, and today, he was feasting on roasted bat. It almost felt like he was on a camping trip rather than a harsh survival test. Ed hadn't eaten anything for 3 days, and now he needed to replenish his energy. He climbed up a tree and stole a large ant nest. Without any preparation, he ate them right away while scratching himself from the ant bites. As night fell, with his stomach struggling from digestion issues, Ed vomited everything he had eaten earlier. His body felt weak from not having a proper meal for 3 days. Determined to find food, he decided to set up a small trap for rodents, hoping that by morning, he would have caught something to eat. Waking up the next morning, Ed went to check his trap, and to his relief, a large rat had been caught. After quickly preparing it by removing the head and skin, he roasted it directly over the fire. At last, he could enjoy his first real meal in days. Ed and Neder didn't have much time left, so at this point, any wrong decision could lead to defeat. On the morning of the 5th day, this would be the deciding day to determine the winner. On one side, Neder gathered wooden logs and built a raft, using the power of the water to speed up his journey to the finish line. The closer they got to the finish line, the faster our 2 survival experts pushed forward. There was no time for rest or food, only the drive to run as fast as they possibly could. Ed was the first to reach the finish line, but due to extreme exhaustion, he collapsed while trying to climb onto the bridge. But right behind him, Neder was advancing fiercely. Instantly, Ed seemed to gain a surge of energy, climbing onto the bridge with all his strength and securing the victory. Ed's next opponent is Andakan, a renowned explorer. He possesses a strong and powerful physique, along with impressive survival skills. The location for this challenge is a vast mangrove forest, where competitors must navigate through crocodile-infested rivers. The first to reach the watchtower at the mountain's peak will be the winner. As soon as both competitors plunged into the water, the challenge officially began. They sprinted into the dense mangrove forest at full speed, climbing and leaping over the tangled branches with incredible agility. At first, thanks to his physical strength, Andakan seemed to have a slight advantage. Even though he was unfortunately kicked into the water, this didn't shake his determination. By nightfall, he had managed to set up a temporary sleeping spot on a sturdy tree trunk. As for Ed, he also secured himself a safe spot to spend the night. Waking up at 7 a.m., Ed began searching for his first meal in the mangrove forest. He found a large snail in the mud. With this type of snail, you can simply crack it open and eat it raw. However, we don't recommend trying this at home. It's extremely difficult to eat. On Andakan's side, thanks to his superior strength, he easily navigated through the dense branches of the forest. However, he believed that the most important thing now was to build a raft. It would help him cross the mangrove forest more efficiently. On Ed's side, he hurried toward the mainland, knowing that in a few hours, the tide would rise. He thought he had finally escaped the mangrove forest, but to his surprise, he had only reached another small island. Quickly, he gathered a large number of vines from nearby and wrapped them around tree trunks to form a triangular structure. This setup had to be sturdy. If not, he would have nowhere to sleep when the tide rose. His opponent was still struggling with his plan when, unfortunately, he fell into the water once again. As night approached, Ed prepared to start a fire. In the wild, fire helps prevent mosquito bites and wards off dangerous animals. Tonight, Ed can finally get a good night's sleep. By the 3rd day, although Ando had considerable strength, his ability to endure hunger was not the same. He prepared a crab trap to regain his energy. The trap was nearly complete. He took it to the riverbank, adding a few leaves as bait. In no time, a crab was caught. He brought it ashore and ate it raw without any preparation. But remember, it's not recommended to try this yourself. On this side, our guy was trying to cross to the other bank. Even though he fell halfway through, no worries. He finally made it to the other side. Although Ed choked a bit on the water, he was fine and kept pushing forward towards the goal. Along the way, he unfortunately had a leech attach itself to his leg, sucking his blood. Not wasting time on it, he decided to make use of the leech as bait and quickly fashioned a simple fishing rod, hoping to catch a meal for the day. After a few minutes, a small catfish bit the hook. Ed was thrilled to see the protein source. That night, he enjoyed a delicious dinner and had a restful sleep, recharging for the challenges ahead. On day 4, the race was on. Both Ed and Andakan knew this was their last chance to make significant progress before the final day. Every move, every decision, and every step counted. They pushed themselves to the limit. knowing that the final stretch would be the ultimate test of endurance and skill. Ando, using his resourcefulness, quickly crafted a hook by tying a piece of rope around a tree branch. With all his strength, he threw the hook across to the other side. When the hook caught onto a sturdy branch, he flipped himself over and began to slowly and carefully make his way across. Ed was no less capable. He had built a hut out of palm leaves, planning to spend the night there. The final day had arrived. Both of them replenished some energy to prepare for today's sprint. With 10 kilometers left to the finish line, they were determined to win. The two of them started running like crazy. Ed charged straight toward the finish line, and the observation tower was right ahead. He climbed up and proved himself to be number one, always ready for the next challengers. This time, Ed faces his toughest opponent yet. His name is John Hasten. He's the head survival skills instructor for the military, with over 25 years of experience teaching survival techniques. A truly influential figure in every sense of the word. The challenge this time takes place in the Himalayas, at an altitude of up to 8,000 meters above sea level. Not only is the air extremely thin, but the cliffs are also dangerously slippery. On top of that, beware of the wild black bears lurking in the area. Both will have to trek through steep and damp hills, covering a distance of around 100 kilometers. Whoever reaches the final stone bridge first will be crowned the winner. At the referee's signal, both competitors set off. John decided to climb up a hill to get a better view of the terrain, allowing him to easily choose the best route. Meanwhile, Ed ignored all that. He simply followed the riverbank on foot, determined to reach the finish line his own way. After walking for just a short while, Ed slipped and tumbled straight into the water due to the slippery rocks beneath his feet. Meanwhile, John kept picking up speed as he moved forward. Along the way, he even gathered some vines in case he needed them later. Without hesitation, he quickly climbed up the mountain. Before long, he reached the mountainside, but now, thick fog had set in, making it impossible for him to see anything. Ed had also reached a higher position by this time. The visibility around him was extremely low due to the thick fog enveloping everything. But drawing on his many years of jungle experience, he knew that the side of trees with fewer leaves usually faces north. Using that knowledge, he was able to determine his direction and continued making his way toward the mountainside. Heavy rain began to pour as John was walking. He slipped and slid down the slope. Luckily, just ahead of him was a natural cave. He decided to stay there and use it as shelter for the night. Ed was in the same situation. He had also found a place to rest for the night. Suddenly, a loud noise woke him up. But stepping out of the cave at this time would be too dangerous, so he decided to wait until morning. Based on the scratch marks on the tree, it became clear that Ed had spent the night in a bear's den. The bear was probably nearby. It was definitely best to run away from this place as quickly as possible. As for John, he woke up after a good night's sleep and felt thirsty. He searched everywhere and finally found a small stream beneath a rock wall. Squeezing himself through a narrow gap, he discovered the decaying remains of an animal, giving off a foul stench. Fortunately, the water was still drinkable. He chose a spot far away from the carcass to quench his thirst, then found his way back out to continue the challenge. At this point, Ed had made it down into the valley. In the distance stood the stone wall, the final destination of the challenge. It was right there, in plain sight. He began to lay out a clear plan for the days ahead, determined to make sure that he would be the one to claim victory. As for John, he had found a place to spend the night. He quickly gathered some dry branches to build a fire, shielding himself from the cold night. It all seemed pretty easy for him. Ed was doing the same, using all his strength to start a fire. Thanks to his prior experience, he continuously rubbed a wooden stick against dry grass. After more than 30 minutes, the first flame finally sparked to life. That was already a big improvement compared to the night before. On the morning of the third day, the first thing Ed did was craft a simple backpack. He tied 3 branches together into a triangle shape, hoping it would come in handy for the challenges ahead. Time to hit the road. John didn't want to go hungry. He was hoping for some meat. He took apart a microphone, which was covered in a waterproof rubber casing. The material had good elasticity, and now he was going to use it to make a slingshot. With skillful hands, he crafted it bit by bit. Not long after, the slingshot was ready. Immediately, he began searching for his first prey. Slowly and quietly, he crept up on a bird without alerting it. He took careful aim and delivered a precise, deadly shot, bringing down his target with one clean hit. As for Ed, he heard some movement next to a rock. When he lifted the rock, he discovered a small snake underneath. He used a flat stone to finish it off, then ate it on the spot, raw and unprocessed. After finishing his meal, he continued on his journey once again. On his side, John discovered a goat's skull along the path. He used some fat he had collected earlier to create a lamp. Breaking off a piece of the skull, he carefully inserted the fat inside. This clever trick allowed him to carry a source of fire with him. After a long hike, Ed had made it halfway up the mountain. But as darkness began to fall and the peak was still nowhere in sight, he found himself stuck on the slope. It was a dangerous situation. One wrong move could cost him dearly. He had no choice but to lean his back against the rock face and try to sleep through the night right there. By the fourth day, both men were climbing up the rocky cliff. Massive boulders and thick fog were slowing John down, making it nearly impossible to pick up speed. Even though he was a survival instructor, the challenge was slowly wearing down his stamina. Ed finally reached the mountain peak. He quickly drank from a nearby waterfall to rehydrate. Up next, both of them would begin their descent, and going downhill was definitely going to be easier. Ed chose to follow the stream, and both men began picking up speed as they neared the stone bridge, the final destination. In the end, Ed was the first to cross it and claim victory. Ed's opponent in this challenge is a heavyweight fighter named Matt. He's also a marathon runner. Running hundreds of kilometers a day is just another Tuesday for him. This time, the challenge takes place in the vast Gobi Desert of Mongolia. Both men will start from the bottom of a valley, then trek 100 kilometers north. Whoever reaches the salt flats first will be the winner. Just a few minutes into the run, the weather shifted dramatically. A cold front was sweeping in, and at an altitude of 3,000 meters, getting wet and exposed to strong winds could be life-threatening. Light rain began to fall, and Ed quickly made the risky decision to descend into the valley. The slopes were slick and dangerous, but he wanted to move faster than Matt. He had heard people call Matt the son of nature, but this time, Ed was determined to show him what it truly meant to be the king of survival, without food or water. Lost in thought, Ed accidentally slipped down the slope, but luckily, he stopped just in time before tumbling over a steep cliff. Meanwhile, Matt was still charging ahead like a madman. It didn't take long before he reached a small stream. After quickly hydrating himself, he gathered a few branches from the surrounding area, ready to build a shelter for the night. An eagle was soaring high in the sky. Ed figured there had to be prey nearby on the cliffside. With all his strength, he climbed up and discovered countless caves of various sizes scattered around. Wasting no time, he set up a simple trap and began to wait patiently. To avoid the rain at night, Matt began building a shelter using wooden logs, then covered it with branches all around. True to his nickname, Son of Mother Nature, he easily started a fire within minutes. Now, all he had to do was craft a tool to catch prey. He decided to make a spear, relying on his own strength and skill. Everything was ready. He just had to wait for tomorrow to begin the hunt. Ed also found a natural cave on the cliffside to spend the night. The next day, Ed's trap from the previous night yielded no results. He had to find something else to eat. As he continued on his path, he stumbled upon the carcass of an animal. After sniffing it, he realized it had been there for quite some time. Although the horns were inedible, he figured they could serve as a container for water. Ed then discovered a new hole and set up another trap, hoping it would bring him some food. Matt woke up early in the morning and started running. Like a moth to a flame, he focused solely on moving forward, climbing over one cliff after another without showing any signs of fatigue. At the summit, he saw the finish line right before his eyes. Mark decided to keep sprinting toward the finish line. It was time for Ed to check the effectiveness of his new trap. If there was no food, he would have to continue his journey with an empty stomach. Fortunately, a prey had been caught in the trap. Ed was ready to make the most out of this mole. He used the mole's skin to create a water container, made a stand, and cut the meat into strips to smoke it. Matt was charging toward the finish line, and the distance between him and Ed had widened by tens of kilometers. He had a significant advantage in terms of distance. The sky was growing darker, and now he only needed to rest for the night. However, the spear in his hand still hadn't been used. He noticed a few small mice ahead and wanted to catch them for food, but after several attempts, he caught nothing. Realizing that if he didn't find food soon, he needed to make fire to ward off the cold of the night. That night, despite the lack of food, he was still in high spirits, knowing he was so close to the finish line. By the third day, Ed was replenishing his energy for the morning. After finishing his meal, he carefully wrapped up all the meat he had gathered the previous day, preparing to carry it with him and eat along the way. On Matt's side, he was still pushing himself to run under the scorching heat of the sun, even though he was already far ahead of Ed. From where he stood, Matt spotted a river in the distance. He made his way towards it, eager to replenish his water supply. Carrying too much meat was draining Ed's energy, so he quickly came up with a clever solution. He designed a small cart using dry branches and placed the meat inside. With everything secured, he began pulling the cart along, making it easier to continue his journey without wasting too much energy. On Matt's side, he reached the stream and took a big gulp of water, refreshing himself. Before nightfall, he crafted a wooden water container from dry wood, knowing he wouldn't make it to the finish line without it. With the container ready, he could continue his journey without worrying about dehydration. Ed also found a spot to rest for the night. By the fourth day, the sun was even hotter than the day before. Ed had to pace himself, walking carefully while constantly sipping water from the leather pouch he had made. Matt hadn't eaten for a long time, so he decided to try catching mice once again. After many failed attempts, he finally succeeded in catching one. He quickly skinned it and roasted it over the fire, enjoying the delicious taste of the smoky grilled mouse. After eating, he continued his journey. Ed was almost exhausted, walking through the hot, dry desert with his water pouch completely empty. He continued forward for a few kilometers and noticed the sand ahead appeared darker and had a more humid look. Seeing a glimmer of hope, he began digging. Luckily, he found water. He used his hat as a cup to drink, filling his water pouch before continuing on his journey. Suddenly, a sandstorm blew in unexpectedly. Ed had no choice but to wait for the wind and sand to subside before he could continue his journey. On the other side, Matt ran to a large lake. He decided to stay here overnight to rehydrate and prepare for the final sprint tomorrow. A little while later, Ed also arrived at the large lake. To avoid being spotted, he crouched down and quickly turned away to run. He decided to work while his opponent was resting. On the fifth day, only 10 kilometers remained until the finish line. Now, both Ed and Matt were progressing at the same pace. When Ed reached the finish line and looked around, he couldn't spot Matt anywhere. He joyfully realized that he was the winner.